All right. Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome our guest today from Santa Clara University, Teresa. She's our friend and she works at the library. And Teresa, do you mind just giving a very quick introduction to yourself before we get started?
Yeah, I can. So hi, I'm Teresa. Like Ethan said, I work at the library at Foothill currently, but I was a student from 2017 to 2019, and then I transferred to Santa Clara University, where I graduated in 2021, so not too long ago. So yeah, I did a couple of things there on campus, and I'll probably go over them a little later, but I did
Yeah,
some like intramural sports. I was in cultural orgs. I did a lot of things with like my major cohort. But yeah, overall it's cool. Happy to be here.
thanks, Teresa. Just for a few general questions to start it off, why did you decide to attend Foothill?
I'll be my very honest answer is that I just wanted to go to a community college that was far away from my high school because I just wanted I knew in the my senior year of high school that I wanted to do community college to save money. And then when it came to choosing between community colleges, I knew I wanted a quarter system school because I feel like I learn better when the terms are shorter. And the only two that were in my area were De Anza and Foothill. And then I chose Foothill because I knew a lot of people from my high school were going to De Anza. So I was like, if I can't go into a 4-year right away, I might as well like put myself in a new environment and sort of get that experience in that sense.
That's
Also, Foothill's just pretty.
gotcha.
Um, that's kind of superficial, but if you're going to spend a lot of time at one place, you might as well enjoy looking at it, I think. But yeah, I think that's the reason why I chose it.
No, that's super cool. Usually people they want to pick the community college like super close to them, but yeah, that's a very unique perspective. That's pretty cool. And for second question, how many schools did you apply to transfer to? And did you always intend to apply to Santa Clara, or was it like a last minute decision?
I applied to one. I'm like counting in my head. I think I applied to 4 other schools. Um, I applied to UC Berkeley, UCLA, uh, University of San Francisco, and Stanford. Um, I in the end, like finances were the biggest thing, like my biggest deciding factor. And I think what it came down to uh was that like I didn't want to pay for housing. But like when it came to like wanting to go to Santa Clara, I knew that they had a pretty good uh history department, which is what I was transferring in for. Um so that's why I was like more inclined to go to Santa Clara. It just hit a lot of boxes for me. Um and I just know for all of the schools that I had chosen to apply to in the first place, these were all schools that had a pretty good history program as well as like a pretty I would say like a really nice archives and special collections in their libraries. I kind of had an idea of of the career path I wanted to take when I was sort of leaving Foothill. I knew I wanted to do like cultural institution stuff, so like museums or libraries. So I just wanted to put myself in a place that had that on campus because I thought it would just be easier to get like job experience.
I see. So did you do a lot of that cultural integration work at Foothill, or is that something that started at Foothill and then it just blossomed when you were in Santa Clara afterwards?
Um, oh yeah, good question. I I was part of the Humanities Mellon Scholars
Oh, nice.
when I was at Foothill.
Nice.
Um, and I think that was like I was when I started it, it was like their first year doing it ever. So I kind of didn't even know what I was doing, if I'm being honest. I just joined it because I thought, oh, it sounds cool to put on your transcript or whatever. But what it did is that it actually set me up with an internship at the California History Center at De Anza, which is a museum. And that's
Um,
what made me discover like that career path. I really enjoyed going, like doing the work there. And then there was someone else like in grad school at the time there, and just asking her a bunch of questions like, what do you do? What'd you do with your major? Like, what career path did you look into? And then she connected me with a bunch of other people. And that's what blossomed like
Oh,
my interest in like this kind of field. So yeah, sorry, that was like a long answer
oh
to your
no, no,
question.
it's a great answer.
To answer your question shortly, uh it was I found like the passion at Foothill. And then so by the time I was transferring out, I wanted to find a place that would kind of help me pursue that passion.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I think a lot of the Phil students have similar stories. For me, it was like with the RSLS and medicine kind of thing. But yeah, it's pretty cool how there's so many different opportunities here at Foothill. So now we have some like a little more transfer specific questions. What is the transfer community like at SCU in terms of like size and the presence on campus?
Um, we I'll be honest, SCU in general is already a small school. I think you'll find that with most privates. Like the class sizes are significantly smaller, say to like a UC or a CSU. So already the transfer cohort was just a handful of us, maybe like 40 or 50. And then out of those 40 or 50, I would say maybe 15 of us transferred from a community college.
Oh,
There were a lot of transfers from one 4-year to another, and they were transferring in as sophomores. And then everyone coming from, a good amount of us came from like De Anza and Foothill. But we were transferring in as juniors. So we were already starting like the upper division classes. So yeah, it was interesting. Like honestly, we didn't get to talk very much, but uh it was a little awkward at first, if I'm being honest, especially because you're transferring in as a 3rd year. Like everyone in your grade level already has like, the friends that they've made or the people that they've like roomed with, like but honestly it wasn't that hard making friends. If it just is little awkward at first because I had to explain like, oh, it's my 1st year here, but I'm a 3rd year. And I had to say that like multiple times, but after a while people got it.
makes sense. And kind of like stemming from that, did a lot of your friends at SCU, were they transfers themselves, or were they also like there since their freshman year or their first
A
year?
lot of my friends ended up being people that were there
Oh, I
since
see.
their 1st year. Yeah. Honestly, yeah, which is like I thought I was gonna stick with like the transfer people I met. But life has a funny way of making you meet new people, which I think in the end was I really, really liked.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, my cousin, he went there too, and he had this like group of maybe like 8 people that were all like Hawaiians and stuff, and they'd go to like uh they'd like take him to Hawaii every summer, and they're all 4 years too. So the people there are always super nice, and it's a great place. Um, what next question? What were the transfer specific resources and services available to you? Um, does SCU provide like any academic advisors or any housing?
Yeah, I think for a good amount of privates, I don't think for SCU, but because I also applied to University of San Francisco, a couple of private schools have guaranteed housing for transfers. Um, because I think as 1st years, you have guaranteed housing. So this is their way of like, since it's your technically 1st year of being on campus, you have that like that privilege to housing. Um, for me, since I was a commuter student, I had a separate transfer orientation that set me up with a counselor, and it also set me up with a librarian. Typically, I think Foothill does this your English class will have like the library orientation and tour, and they kind of go through all the databases you need to do. I got that, but it was like one-on-one with
Um,
this person. So I was like, what's going on? But it was actually super, super helpful because she helped me catch up basically with of 2 years of like things that I did not know about or would not have known about if she did not help me. Because there are a lot of like, things that you have to learn about like this new school you're going to and the environment you're going to be in for the 2 years. So um I felt like they helped me get like an even footing academically right off the jump, which I was grateful for.
yeah, that's so cool. I mean, those one-on-ones with your one-on-one meetings. Um, Next question, has integrating into the larger community of non-transfers felt seamless? And did you participate in any on-campus clubs or like Greek life over at SCU?
I'm gonna be real. It was not seamless. Felt like I was sneaking myself into places at weird times.
Mhm.
But I think that's kind of the nature of it when you transfer. Everyone, most people there have been there from their first year and have gotten the time to live there. So at one point, it kind of felt like I was visiting like a house that I was new to. Um, but I think I joined Barcata, which was the Filipino American Cultural Club on
Mhm.
campus. And that was like really helpful in me finding like people outside of the transfer cohort. Um, because like the first meeting of any club, everyone's just trying to meet new people. So when people have asked me like, oh, I'm going to transfer to a new school, I don't know how to make friends, I highly recommend joining a club. Actually, I recommend going to just a bunch of first club meetings. Like I did meetings of like clubs that I had no interest in the topic. I just needed to be around people and I was trying to put myself out there. And because like the nature of a first meeting is to get to know everyone and see who's new, see who's been there for a while, no one's gonna be like mean. Everyone's gonna be generally welcoming and like care about like who you are and like um what your vibe is basically. And then after all those first meetings you can figure out like which club you think was the coolest, and then you can keep going to their meetings throughout the school year. But yeah, Barcata was the club because I already had like because I'm Filipino, so I already had like the cultural connection there. It was
Mhm.
easier to make a connection with those people there, I found. So yeah,
So cool.
that was
Do you
cool.
have any like memorable experiences or events from Barcata? Like the
Yeah,
most?
I do. Oh my God. I they we have a Christmas party every
Uh,
year. Um, and we always do White Elephant. And so like imagine all these people packed in their house playing White Elephant. And I like got the last choice. And you know how you can steal something from White Elephant? I stole this guy's rubber chicken and I still have it. You can't see. Oh wait, yeah, it's right here. One sec. This is my pride and joy. Stole this rubber chicken
uh,
from this guy, and it still to this day is something that like we talk about. um because it was like you had to be there moment, but it was
uh-huh.
just my most memorable thing that I have a rubber chicken. Oh, I took my grad photos with that chicken too, so that was cool.
So that chicken was like your like iconic like
Yeah,
item going through
that
your
was like
Barcata
my
stuff.
peak.
That's so cool. Because I think my little brother is in that club too, Barcata, and I'll let him know about the Christmas parties and stuff. So um, next question: how does the academic rigor of SCU, how did it compare to that of Foothill?
Ooh, I think what Foothill prepared me the best for was college writing. Um, I think there's a lot of great, or at least when I was going to Foothill, which again is not that long ago, so I feel like these instructors are still here. A lot of the English instructor really hammered down like what an academic paper was and like what a college level paper was and just the structure of it, how to build an argument, things like that. And that served me so well at Santa Clara, especially as someone with a liberal arts degree. Once you get to your upper division classes, you're just writing. Um, and even for like, say if you're a business major or a STEM major, you're going to be writing at one point. It's part of the graduation requirement. So just knowing how to write a college level paper and just kind of hammering those skills down very early, I think served me very, very well in the end. I will say also, if for people who want to go to a private school, be prepared for smaller classes. So like they're really like more intimate spaces. When I went to Foothill, I had a tendency to kind of sit, against the wall towards the back and just listen and take notes. And I was okay with that. But those were classes with like 20 or 30 people in them. I had classes with like only 5 people in them at one point, and there's no hiding from the professor's eyes. So you're kind of forced to take part in the discussion at one point. But again, I think that was also very helpful to my learning in the end. But I know it can be an adjustment to some people, especially if they're not expecting like that small of a class size. Like for privates, it can happen sometimes. So just, be mindful. The learning environment is just a little bit different.
I see. And you just answered my very next question about class size. So, so do you have any like notable interactions or any notable professor to student interactions at SCU and at Foothill? Do you like feel like that there's always like an open and comfortable line of communication between you and the professors at SCU?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I have a, like at Foothill, now that I work here, it's a little awkward, I think, when I go up to like a person who's now my coworker and tell them that they were my teacher at one point. Like I went up to John Fox, like, I don't know if you remember me, but you taught me for sociology. And then he like recalled something that happened in his class, and I was like, yeah, that was me, that was my class. And so stuff like that. But even at SCU, I would say like I still have an open line of communication to them, and that like for the schools that you transfer to, like those professors, especially for private school professors, because it's not like compared to UC, sometimes it's not as heavy as a research school. So they do have like more time to teach you and get to know you. And because you have like the smaller class sizes, you have the opportunity to get to know the professors too. So like honestly, I like the professors I had at SCU, they're like my homies now. Like I just text them when I feel like it. And one of them invited me to their wedding and I like cried a little bit. I was like, wow, we're really like this now, huh?
That is so cool.
So yeah, sometimes it's a little intimidating to talk to a professor, I think, but they really are just like humans. And if they understand the student experience because they went through it a lot, they'll, you can make a good connection with them. And you're gonna ask for a reference or a letter of recommendation at one point, so you might as well start making friends.
True. Did you end up going to the wedding?
Yeah, I did.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Super nice. I cried.
That is so cool. Okay, I have a few more application specific questions, so you just get onto those. Which on-campus resources at Foothill did you use or wish you used that supported you most during your SCU application process?
Ooh, I kind of wish I really, really went to the transfer center a lot. I think maybe a little too much because I get anxiety with applications. So at one point the Cleve Freeman was my counselor, which I believe he's still the transfer counselor, right?
Yeah, he's around.
I have not talked to him ever since I started working here. So let's keep this on the down low for now. But I would hit him up like once every 2 weeks. Like, hey, am I still on track? Is everything okay? He would have to tell me, calm down. Between your last time you asked me about your application and now. But the transfer center really had a lot of resources when it came to even just like trying to figure out what school I wanted to go to. He helped break down like what were some good logistical things to think of. Like he asked me where would I not mind living for 2 years. Where are places that like the city is like generally safe. Like these are a bunch of logistical things I didn't even think about because I was so focused on the academic side that Cleve helped break down. And he also told me that like there's a couple of like transfer opportunities for schools that I didn't think of. Like Santa Clara University was one of them. I had no idea that I had similar to the tag system for the UCs. Some privates have a similar system. So Santa Clara was one of those schools at the time. And Cleve looked into it for me and helped break it down. It was a very specific, like if you majored in a liberal arts of some sort, you could have guaranteed admission to a private school, something like that. And I don't know if it's still relevant today, but like I think it's something worth asking about if people are interested in going into privates, because I know there's in comparison to the UCs and the CSUs, since it's not like systematized like those schools, it's a little daunting to take on the application. But the transfer center helped me through it. And they were like my main go-tos. I'm trying to think of like other resources that I wish I used, but honestly, I feel the transfer center did it all for me.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. That program you talked about, that's very interesting. It feels like I haven't heard about that myself, so it's definitely something I'll look into in the future. I know that USF has the connection with the Humanities Mellon Scholar thing. Um, is it something like that? You have to be like a Mellon Scholar or something to take part in your SCU program?
Yes. I think and again, maybe this is outdated or maybe things have changed since I went to Foothill, but for USF, if you were a Humanities Mellon Scholar, you could have they call it a guaranteed admission, but I think it's more so like your application gets quote unquote put on top of the pile because you've put in all these prerequisites to get like the humanities certificate that comes with the program. And similar with Santa Clara, what their prerequisite was that I do like that I major in some kind of liberal arts. So it was either like art history, English, something like that. They didn't have one for the STEM or nursing majors, unfortunately. But because I was transferring as a history major, I like qualified for that prerequisite, and they told me that I had like it like increased my chances for admission, something like that.
Dang, that's so cool. And okay, next question. If you remember your SCU essay questions, which one of them was the most challenging to answer or for you to answer?
Honestly, any question that basically asks me to like just to tell them about who I am.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I
I
feel
don't know
that
who I am.
too.
Or it's kind of tough. I should have looked at my application before this, but
All
they
right.
had asked I think 2 or 3 questions. One of them was like more on the academic side. I was like, okay, I got this. But when it came to like the actual personal statement, like why should we admit you to our school sort of thing, I was like, I don't know like what to write. I don't know like how to talk about myself in a way that it's like, please accept me to your school, especially when I like all I've done was write like only college papers, right? So I was like more like an argumentative type of paper rather than like a narrative kind of paper. But I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I got was like, one, just it helps to like tell a story that you care about, like that happened in your personal life. So that's what I did. And then two, like when you're done writing it, have someone that doesn't know you very well to read over your paper, and kind of like revise it, because I think most people will go to their friends, right, to read over their papers, but your friends already know who you are. So if you give it to someone who doesn't know you very well, they'd be able to, tell you what they got out of the paper. And if it's like not you, then you have to like change things. So I got like my old coworkers to read over my paper because they were more like, like acquaintance level, not like bestie level, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what was tough about it.
No, that's some great advice. I definitely should have done that when I was submitting my UC apps last book. So, anyways, next question. So aside from your Mellon Scholar and um your Mellon Scholar stuff and the museum internship thing, what were your notable extracurricular activities at Foothill before transfer?
Ooh. Um,
Or if you'd like, you can just expand on the other ones that I that you
oh
mentioned earlier
yeah.
too.
I was trying to think. I'll be honest. It was kind of tough to balance because I worked full time too. It's kind of tough to balance like say attending a club meeting and then school and then work. So I understand that struggle. Um, I think for for the museum internship thing, uh that was like in tandem with the Mellon Scholars, but I was the only one doing it. Like I would go to the museum like on my own and work with the people at Dianza. And I thought that provided like really good, really valuable work experience. I think when you're at a place like Foothill or any kind of community college, and you kind of don't know what to do, um, community college is the place to like start trying different things you wouldn't have expected to try. I came into Foothill wanting to be a teacher, um, and I applied to like teaching internships and I didn't get them. The only place that did accept me was this museum. And so when I did the museum thing, I actually ended up liking it a lot. And that's what kind of opened my eyes to that field. So I think when it comes to like extracurriculars at Foothill and like trying to get something out of it, it would be good to try going out of your comfort zone a little bit, like try something new. Um, Even things that like you wouldn't have expected or that you'd like find any interest in, at least you tried it out once and you tried it out like while you're in community college, because I think it's like pretty low stakes. Like if you don't like something at this point, if at this point of your educational career, it's not going to take a huge hit compared to say when you're like deep in your senior year of whatever school that you're in. It's a little tough, because now you're starting to think about like graduating or like the tuition and stuff. So um this kind of doesn't answer your question.
Oh no, it's
So sorry, since I didn't do any other extracurriculars. But as someone who didn't do extracurriculars, I wish I had the time to do a little bit more and explore a little bit.
yeah, that's a great answer. Regardless of what so also about the application, did you submit any standardized test scores when you were applying to SCU, like ACT, SAT?
I submitted the SAT. I didn't take an ACT. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no worries. And then next. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. What do you think made you stand out most in your application?
Ooh. I think honestly, I think extracurriculars, but
Extracurriculars.
not just like things at Foothill that I did. I did extracurriculars outside of Foothill. Like again, I worked full time and it was a retail job. I worked at Starbucks. And then I also helped coach volleyball for a little bit. But like I don't think people flex their retail jobs enough. Like if you really think about it, it's tough to work a retail job, right? I think those are very valid and real experiences to put on your transcript. And it also shows to like the school that you were able to, go to school, be responsible enough to balance like your work and your classes. That's a really great skill for any applicant to have. On top of that, like if you're working at those kind of places, that's like you're working with people, right? So now then you already have like the interpersonal communication experience that a lot of colleges I feel like look for. Um and things like that. Because I'll be honest, I didn't have like a super crazy high GPA or anything. I think it's because I talked about the experiences that I did have in a way that really like highlighted the skills I gained from them. It's what made my application really strong. I think someone described it as like you work with what you got sort of thing, but
Mhm.
you really have to like if whatever like self-doubt or like imposter syndrome you may have when you're kind of writing an application, because I think that kind of comes with like writing about yourself too. You have to do your best to kind of put it to the side and see that like you did a lot, like whatever you're doing now is a lot, and there's a way to like really express that in writing or like however you have to put it on an application.
That's again, that's super, really, really good advice. Yeah. And then final question about the application. How did you decide which professors to ask for your rec letter, and any advice on how to make that request?
Ooh, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think who did I ask for? Oh, I think I asked Dr. Kameen to write my rec letter. She still teaches humanities at Foothill. Um the way I decided is that I just took multiple of her classes. So I ended up asking her just because I sort of knew her. Um, but I mean, that's not like a prerequisite to ask a professor. Honestly, if you liked your professor, like you genuinely liked the class, I think it's worth reaching out to them. Um, I would say a good practice is that you let them know well in advance, like give them more than 2 weeks to write this letter of recommendation, because professors have really busy schedules, so it's just a courteous thing. And also like usually people ask through email, and I think the formula goes something along the lines of like reintroduce yourself, say what class you took, say what you liked about the class, and then just mentioning that you're applying for school, you need a letter of recommendation. Would it be cool if you could write one for me? And then you can even ask like add a little bit of like your career goals and your academic goals, just so they know what to put in the letter of recommendation. And generally like instructors um are down to do it, just as long as you give them a good amount of time to write it.
Mhm.
I find that 2 weeks is a pretty good amount of time.
That's also again some great advice there. So,
It's super relevant because
um,
I'm in grad school, so I had to ask
ah,
some people for a letter of recommendation.
that's so funny. Oh, and then final few questions here. Overall, what kind of person and student do you believe that SCU is a good fit for?
What a
Pretty
question.
deep question.
Um, wow. There's ooh, where could I go with this question? Oh man. Oh man. This is hard. Um, because like to be honest, like I enjoyed my time at SCU.
Mhm.
And I think it did what it needed to do. I got my degree, I met some cool people, I learned a lot of things. But I also don't want to give it like all these crazy flowers. I think there were still a lot of things that were difficult at that school. Um, so ooh, I think for the type of student, it could go one of two ways. I think it's a really great business school if you're considering being a business major, and you want to, especially if you want to continue living in California, particularly the Silicon Valley. SCU has crazy connections, and a crazy business school, that really sets you up for working in like corporate America, if that's of interest to you. So if that's like the student you want to be, um, I would say look into Santa Clara's business school. If you're a student that is looking for I guess like a challenge, um academically, or just genuinely, like, how do I phrase this? Yeah, if you're looking for a challenge academically, but you also don't want to compete against your peers, because the school is not as competitive within each other, I think Santa Clara is one of those schools. I think there's a lot of ideas that being a Santa Clara student, you have to kind of push against. Like Santa Clara is built on a California mission. So already, like, you're kind of faced with a lot of history that if you don't know going into it, you're gonna have to learn about it. So you have to kind of, you know, be ready to see like all these different perspectives. Some people don't want that. Some people would rather have like a more, I guess, like straightforward experience with their schooling, right? But I, as someone who is a history major and a little deranged, wanted that. So Santa Clara felt like a good fit for me, if that made sense. I think personality types, there's so many different personality types that it's really hard for me to kind of narrow down what personality type it would suit for. But I think Santa Clara is interesting in that there's a lot of implications that as a Santa Clara student you kind of take on, and you learn like how to address like all these like social issues that come with being like a student on unceded like Moakma Ohlone territory. You learn about all this California history that you did not learn about in high school, things like that. But I think you become a more well-rounded learner going out of Santa Clara. It's whether or not you want to put the time to like do that. That's up to everyone.
Not great
That's a
answer.
very complicated answer, by the way. It's such a tough question.
I mean, the main two things I've taken from it, like Santa Clara, it required you to be a lot more like open-minded, and it turns you into like a better learner and a better student. So I think that's a great input there. And final question, do you think that Santa Clara was the right choice for you?
What is the right choice and wrong choice?
Yeah, that's true.
I think in the end it was, but not in the way I was expecting to, coming in. And I guess like I'm saying a lot of stories, sorry.
I know you did. Yeah.
A story to explain or help ground my explanation is that I transferred in as a history major. I ended up graduating with an anthropology major, which was not part of the plan at all. But to me, the anthropology major was the best part of my Santa Clara experience. So I think it was the right choice for me in the end. It just turned out differently. And I think like I'm sure like a lot of people hear this too as students. It doesn't matter where you go. It's like what you do with it. And I also strongly believe that, even though I know it is nice to have a certain school on a piece of paper. But I think it's because when people kind of put themselves out there, or like have like a rigor to like learn new things in a new environment, it shows to the people who are willing to like nurture you or mentor you as a learner. So I think in the end it was the right choice. I mean, I'm working at Foothill now, so I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah, no, you definitely got a great, you had like a great story and a great setup. And yeah, that's the end of the questions, and we really appreciate you coming and sharing your time with us today. Um, looks like Alekos has a question here. How does the school's Jesuit background play into your experience as a student? And do you learn about religion in your classes over there?
What a great question. Oh my God, spoken like a true, spoken like a true moderator. Uh,
I got to do something. We've only got Gina in here at the moment. So.
that's such a good question. Honestly, it didn't play. It didn't. When you go into a Jesuit university, I think most students are actually like atheists. What they really push in their advertising is that they are a community oriented, or they have like a social justice based education. Um, there's a phrase called cura personalis, which I feel like every Jesuit student knows, because it's like care for the person or whatever. It's like they, batter it down to you every time they talk about the school. But like all of that being said, I felt like, to me, um it didn't play like a role in teaching me things about, say, like community care or social justice, but it was just like another lens that I had to like go through as a student, like, if that makes sense. I wish I could say like, oh, I didn't really feel it as a student, but there were like moments where I was like, oh, that's right, I go to a Jesuit university, there's going to be, mass on campus, or we're going to have like the religious holidays off. Your instructor is a priest. I didn't know that was a thing until I went to Santa Clara, because I went to a public school like all my life. So Santa Clara was actually the first private school that I went to. And I guess like, if for people wanting to transfer to a private school, especially if it's a Jesuit university, keep in mind that most, if not all, of the Jesuit universities have some sort of religion course requirement to graduate. We called it RTC at Santa Clara. It's like religion, theology, and culture. So I had to do, I think, 2 religion classes to make sure I graduated. And because they're religion classes and there's not a lot of religion classes at Foothill, if anyone decides to go to Santa Clara, that's probably one of the requirements you're going to be looking to fulfill first, just because the credits don't cleanly transfer over. Just keep in mind, because I didn't know that when I came in. So I ended up having to take some religion classes, but they were actually like really interesting. So you don't really, to answer your second question, you do learn about religion in classes, but it's not like a religious class, more like a society and culture kind of class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, I think Alekos and we had like religion classes in high school, because Sacred Heart in Bellarmine. So yeah, it's nice to see that kind of continuing into the college there. We have one question from Gina here. Could you tell us more about your internship, and what aspects of it did you enjoy? Because it sounded like fun. That's what she said. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
it was a lot of fun. It was I worked at the California History Center. That's at De Anza. If you haven't checked it out, or if you happen to be on De Anza, I recommend that you visit the building, because it's really cool. But basically what it is that it's just a little, it's a little archival space on campus that also acts as like one of their exhibit spaces. So every now and then we would have like an exhibit up. For me, my role was to help them supplement their summer course curriculum that they were trying to make. And that included a lot of just like independent research on my end. So when I talk about job experience, it was super helpful because I did a lot of things on my own, and I learned how to like manage my time, but also like use my resources wisely to get something done, because it was honestly kind of a hands-off internship, and they were like, here's the general guideline of things we'd like you to do research on, like, could you tell us like how to do it, that sort of thing. And I can even talk about like my friends' experiences too. We all had different like internships in different places around like the South Bay. So I had some friends like that interned at the textile museum in downtown San Jose, and they all, most if not all of them, revolved around doing like independent research and then compiling something. And even some people took it a step further, and they were like, they would like stay during the summer and help like more with their programming. So I think the Los Altos History Museum was also one of the sites, and I had a friend of mine who like stayed even longer to help with one of these like exhibits that they were putting up about like Loma Prieta, like the earthquake that happened here a long time ago, and that included going to different archives in the area. So she actually had to travel a bunch, but she got like compensated for her time. She got paid well. But yeah, I hope that that answers your question a bit. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the independent research aspect a lot, and I also enjoyed the fact that like the people that I worked with were very open about what I was willing to bring to the table too, because it wasn't like I reached out to them for an internship. It was more so like they needed help and were asking for interns. So that also was like a different like dynamic. Like they were willing to be more open about like what ideas would be put onto the table, I think.
And just out of curiosity, were those internships for you and your friends? Was that something you got from the Humanities Mellon Scholar Program? Or did you have to go outside of that program to find them?
Yeah, it was something with the Humanities Mellon Scholars Program.
I see.
There's like, I think Foothill does a pretty good job with internships in general, not just the Mellon Scholars, because I know like SLI has a lot of like internships with Stanford, things like
Sure.
that.
Well, and looks like there's another question here. Do you have a favorite topic that you researched about?
You're gonna make me cry with these questions. I'm being thrown back right now. I'm getting like my flashbacks. Yeah, I do. We did we did a race and resistance exhibit at the CHC, and that wasn't like my main role. I just the people there just needed help, so I offered to step in, and I got to learn about Speed City at San Jose State University, which was like when back then SJSU had a really good track and field team, and they would call it Speed City because it was like all the fastest runners were coming out of SJSU. So like, I think oh my God, let me not mess up the facts. But the Black Power statue on campus at SJSU, like I got to like give like resources to like supplement that statue and stuff like that. And it was really cool. I learned like a bunch of random facts about San Jose through the African American perspective, which was like one of the things where it was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know like this person did this, and I've lived here like almost all of my life. Like I'm from Milpitas. I had no idea like one of the first Black mayors in California was a mayor in Milpitas. Like those are things like I didn't know about. So that race and resistance and SJSU's Speed City topic was like my favorite, because I learned so much about where I lived, and it made me feel like really good. I was like, yeah, I live here.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then you had like a contribution to the statue too, which is also super, super cool. Yeah, thanks, guys. It doesn't look like we have any more questions in the chat, but we can give it like a minute. See if there's any last minute ones. Let's see.
I think that's all from me, but thank you so much for coming. Frieza, we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I hope I gave Good questions.
Yes, you
I mean,
definitely
good
did.
answers. I didn't give a
Yes.
question.
No, those were great. Those were amazing answers, Teresa. We're gonna go like upload this later on our Discord and stuff. So um I think they'll really our members are really gonna appreciate it. So
Yeah, private schools. Woo!
yeah, that's
All
fine.
right. Thank you all so much.
Mhm.